They certainly can't do what they've been doing in Oregon, which is arresting people without a warrant and without probable cause, holding them for a few hours and then letting them go. So they have to be restrained.
But will they be?
And is Trump determined to prove Antifa right? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, everybody and their mother knows that Vincent is not a fan of Antifa in any way, shape, or form. Now, there are a bunch of sympathetic Antifa folks in Middle America. If you want to join our community, dear listener, that's facebook.com/America Middle, where you will meet the great Izzy Jimenez, the great Cassia Bell, etc., etc. You can talk to yours truly. And there are many Antifa-friendly individuals in our forum and in other forums that we've had. Now, the first time I was introduced to an Antifa apologist was a fellow by the name of BM Fan. Mm-hmm. BM Fan is a radical, crazy Marxist, whatever. And I always presumed that Antifa's rhetoric and tactics, that every normal thinking person would disagree with him. And BM Fan was completely and totally in support of them. I was like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. He said, Vin, these people are fascists. Trump is a fascist. You heard that the entire time. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. I said, tell me what fascistic thing Trump has actually done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 3 months, Trump, in my view, has proven Antifa to be correct. Now, I have no problem with saying I was ignorant to certain facts because I'm a Christian and I believe that only God is omniscient. But I vehemently disagreed with the idea that Mr. Trump was a fascist. However, in order to continue that narrative, you would have to put your head in the sand. Now, I don't know how these individuals were able to sniff out Mr. Trump's fascism or his fascistic tendencies, but recent events have made it absolutely clear that I was wrong, and Mr. Trump absolutely not only has fascistic tendencies, but has no problem with fascistic execution. And I mean that in every sense of the term as far as the semantic domain for execution goes. Guys, we're in a situation now where federal agents who really, if you put them side by side with a guy on deployment in Iraq or Afghanistan or Niger or in any other theater where we are wreaking havoc and bloodshed and death over the world, you would not be able to tell, dear listener, the difference between those folks over there and the folks over here at the federal level getting after American citizens. This is an absolute disaster. And the reason I started with this judge is because he's a Fox News contributor. And even this judge is saying that the craziness that we're seeing in Portland, among other cities, is crazy and unconstitutional, and that the folks doing it need to be restrained. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem, Judge. They were deployed by our president, and who the hell is going to restrain him? Good night. Here is one of the governing members of the city of Portland, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And now here's Don Lemon. Now look, it's a cold day in hell when your brother agrees with anything on CNN or Don Lemon. But in this particular circumstance, when you're right, you're right. Let's watch.
You've had protests in your city for more than 50 days now, but the escalation in violence is really a recent change. What happened?
Oh, this is just crazy. We were coming to the end of our nightly demonstrations, at least the part where people were vandalizing things and some scattered acts of violence. But we saw the energy coming out of that. We thought it would be done in a couple of days. But then the federal government sent in dozens, if not hundreds of troops. They engaged in what I would describe as really abhorrent tactics. And basically they blew the lid off of this. Since they've been here, we've had huge crowds come downtown. We've had more violence. They basically kicked the hornet's nest.
Wow.
Are you starting to notice a pattern? The name of the game, law enforcement, is called de-escalation. You're supposed to
Yeah.
de-escalate tensions in a given area. And this brother is saying that, sure, there were some unruly people. There's
It was
right.
dwindling down.
It was dwindling down. We had crested and we're going down to the end of it. And then these dudes showed up and kicked a hornet's nest, as we shall see later on. And it almost starts making you wonder, what is this man actually trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
There was nobody in this brother's circle that was telling him, hey, Mr. Trump, Portland's actually not a good look because they're actually starting to calm down. Now, keep in mind, Portland was at the center of one of these crazy Antifa situations where basically law enforcement was told to stand down a couple years ago, and these dudes like went roughshod all over the place and were going after cops and doing all this silliness. And I'm pretty sure we reported on that actually. So you can if I find the video, I'll post the link up here somewhere. So I'm not partial to Portland or Antifa. However, have you been hearing about Portland in the news massacring hundreds and hundreds of people? Have the people of Portland been so radical in their Antifaism or whatever other ism you want to say that people were dying and dropping on the ground such that we needed a federal Gestapo to show up to quell their protest? What is the logic here, ladies and gentlemen, other than a guy saying, you're going to listen to me?
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
This is a hallmark of a guy who doesn't like being contradicted, is not used to contradicting him, and believes that the way to get people back in line, which from the beginning,
He's like brute control instead of trying to persuade people.
Correct. And from the beginning, Mr. Trump has, again, you have to give it to the MFan and the Antifa folks. You remember all the violence that was happening at Trump rallies and the actual assaults. And you remember Trump from the stage saying,
he said he'd pull somebody's...
Well, that was bad, but the worst one was, back in the day, these people would be leaving in stretchers. You remember that?
I forgot he said that.
And then he talked about how he would pay the lawyer's fees for any of his crazy acolytes who would go and do violence on his behalf in one of his little thingamajiggies over there with thousands of people. And I guess this is where the Antifa people would say, yeah, Vin, you idiot. He was doing that when he had no federal power as the president of the United States. And now he's got control of these folks. What did you think was going to happen? Good point. You're right. That's true. I was wrong. That's true. I should have connected that behavior and said, wait a second here.
Yeah.
This is the guy we want in charge of the troops, National Guard, Homeland Security?
Yeah, but who would have thought?
Well, a lot of people would have thought. That's the point.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like, I don't know.
When you think about what he was saying during, and again, when he talks about that.
No, I see what you're saying.
When he talks about that, it's like, wait a second. What do you mean back in the day, like the 50s and 60s? Who was getting wheeled out in stretchers in the 50s and 60s? It was protesters, mostly black, but also white, who were protesting against police brutality and Jim Crow. So I should have told you everything you needed to hear. Unbelievable stuff. We continue.
This video is so disturbing. You have camouflaged men taking a protester away in an unmarked van, and we have since learned that they are CBP officers, but you didn't ask for this assistance. How are your local law enforcement officials and residents reacting to this? Talk to me, sorry.
They're not happy about it. Our local and our state law enforcement officials, elected officials, we're unified. We didn't ask for these troops in our city. We don't want these troops in our city. And the tactics they're using are very un-American, and everybody should pay attention to this. They're coming into our city, they're in unmarked vans, they pull people off the streets, they don't necessarily have probable cause, and they don't actually identify who they are to the people they're pulling into the vans. So there's some really serious constitutional issues here.
I have a problem with that. Oh my gosh.
When you say he's very un-American?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's not true. When people say this is un-American, what they mean is, you're supposed to do that to people overseas. You're supposed to take people from Syria and Afghanistan and use the rendition program to blacklight them and torture them for whatever. You shouldn't do that to us. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is one of those situations Brother Malcolm talked about. The hens have come home to roost.
Wow.
We had unjust policies dating back into the post 9/11 world. The rendition program was one of them, where you can snatch somebody up, drop them off in Yemen. They'll never be heard from again. It's one of the reasons that Brother Anwar al-Awlaki was radicalized, was because of the time he spent in a black site due to the rendition program. Those are facts. You can issue a FOIA and you can see that I'm telling the absolute truth. And so when Americans say this, we have to challenge ourselves and say, hey, we were allowing this to happen for close to 20 years to people overseas. And it was just a matter of time before somebody was going to use the same template and use a national tragedy or disaster as an excuse to do this. Now, this is called the Legend Act, or Operation Legend or something, because there's a young boy that got killed, black kid, that got killed in Kansas City, Missouri. And so Trump trots this kid's mother up on stage, and then he says, I am increasing the amount of these federal agents that are going to be coming in the city. And then it was really, really interesting because Fox News says that Trump had a law and order special. So he keeps talking about this law and order stuff, which is code word now for, look, man, if you disagree with me and my crazy policies and you start hitting the streets, we're going to get at you with federal agents. This is not a good look. This is a disaster. And look, my right-leaning friends, you may be happy at the persecution from these that these leftists are experiencing. But how long do you think it's gonna be before your group gets broad-stroked as some terrorist horrible organization or whatever? We got a guy here, everything, Antifa's a terrorist organization, blah, blah, blah. Good. Okay. Well, what happens when, and it's looking more and more likely, God forbid, that Biden win. What happens when he starts saying that folks on the right are crazy? I mean, you know, there's enough cannon fodder, right? There's the alt-right, there's all this with the guns and yada, yada, yada. Are you going to be okay with Mr. Biden deploying jackbooted troops to go harass regular citizens in Montana or Texas? Now, I know in Texas, I know what y'all are saying in Texas. Well, we got guns. Tell that to the Bundy family. Trust me, you don't have enough guns to resist the American military. Please, please, please go back and see David Koresh. And yes, there were 2 Delta operators in that, at least 2 in that operation. So all these, you know, Portland's a liberal city. It's like one of the most liberal cities in America. And so, you know, there's not a lot of love from the Republican side. They don't, you know, they're like, good for them. But it's this very strange, it's just like I was saying during the impeachment. You don't think that Republicans can come up with some stupid, silly rumor for the next Democratic president, and if they have the majority in the House and Senate, that they can't impeach the next president since you opened that box? This is the same situation. This dude just opened the fascist Pandora's box. And you got a bunch of, now, not all right-wingers, because I know I've seen a couple right-wingers go, whoa. What in the world? Look what Portland has become. Look, what I'm about to show you is mind-boggling. Look at this. There's a famous group of women now. They're called the moms, right? And these moms are they're the front lines of the protest. Listen to this.
We are there to lend our bodies as a barrier to make sure that the federal agents understand that our communities are protected.
Wow.
Think about that video.
Moms are here.
You got moms getting flashbanged by these paramilitary Gestapo bastards. You don't think that this is going to show up when you go head to head with Biden? Mr. Trump? Kellyanne Conway? Leah, get your boy. He's drunk. Trump is on his Kanye West energy right now. He's completely losing his mind. And it's become very obvious that he does not know how to persuade people. He just knows how to threaten people. And it's been literally from the beginning of this man's campaign, and now he's in a situation where there's all this unrest, and the man doesn't have a conciliatory bone in his body, and the only thing the man can do is increase more and more police presence to carry out his fascistic, almost divine Caesar-like will. This is absolute and complete madness. It's a disaster. And I'm sorry, but if you... I was never a Trump supporter, full disclosure. But if you're a Trump supporter and this doesn't bother you, this should bother you. I mean, what is like, this is the thing that kills me about the right. I'm not talking about all of you. I'm just talking in general terms. There's all this states' rights and what are states' rights and citizenry and civil disobedience and yada, yada, yada. And you guys are cool with federal agents. And as the judge said, they can't go and do what they're doing. Guy's got his hand up. He's not... You're going to go and put this kid in an unmarked vehicle? Really?
That's mad.
In America? In Portland? Oregon?
It's weird because you don't feel like you're looking at something from America. Honest to goodness, it looks like this can't be.
Yeah.
But then I look up in the corner and it says Portland, Oregon. I'm like, this is wild.
You know, when the Iranians shot down that plane. I held most of the culpability to Trump. But Trump had the audacity to shoot out a tweet that said, hey, the leaders of Iran, make sure you don't do anything against those beautiful, peaceful protesters over there. Iran didn't do this. They didn't do this, Mr. Trump. Wow. Look, Trump is in a situation where it's apparent to me that his ego has run wild. And I am sure there's some people in that inner circle that are trying to tell him to take a more conciliatory approach and to de-escalate, but his pride, his legacy, and honestly, the man makes policy decisions after watching Fox News. And so he's being influenced, it's like in high school, somebody, says something reckless to you and crazy and you can just ignore it. But then you always have those fake friend instigators like, yo, you gonna let him talk to you like that? You gonna let him talk to you like that? So what's happening, he's watching a steady diet of Fox News. He's seeing how there's this giant attack on law enforcement and black the blue and back the blue, not black the blue. There's too much black on the blue. So that's a different story. But he's seeing all this stuff, and while people are saying we need to defund police, reallocate resources to help people, he's saying I'm going to increase the police force as far as the police state, as in this is some Orwellian level stuff. Mr. Trump, we're running on 144,000 deaths from COVID right now. Don't you think you could have used some of that money that you're deploying to 6 cities across America? Don't you think you could have used some of that capital to maybe invest in our health system and our health situation? Maybe we should get in front of the camera and talk about what we're going to do healthcare wise instead of always being in a pissing contest with your own constituency. Yeah. Because whether or not the people of Oregon voted for you, there's probably 5 people that voted for him. They're still part of your constituency, Mr. Trump. Now he's trying to use Chicago as his reason. Because Chicago is an absolute and complete literal war zone. I mean, Chicago, there was a funeral, and dudes are shooting out of the car from the funeral, and then other dudes went up and chased the car down and was shooting those people. This is an absolute war zone there. Honestly, I gotta tell you, whatever happens in Chicago, as far as the troops go, I really could care less. Because it's gotta be better than what's happening there. Bodies are dropping all over the place there.
This was dropping off, and then...
Correct. The killers in Chicago are literally, they have a scoreboard. Like, I'm not going to show you on the dark web where that is. But they have a scoreboard of the people that they're killing. So you send in the national, ATF, I don't care. I honestly don't care. Something has to change over there in urban Chicago. But that's not happening in Portland. People aren't getting bodied every day in Portland. So to use that as an excuse to deploy these stormtroopers is a horrible, horrible look. And nobody's falling for it. Mr. Trump, nobody. You know, it wasn't even front and center on Fox News. And, you know, it's kind of like Dave Chappelle said. The reason, you know, when he was talking about Jussie Smollett, and people were interpreting the silence of the black community as that we weren't supporting him. And Chappelle said, we were supporting him with our silence because we knew this brother was clearly lying. So when Fox News runs one little thingamajiggy with Judge, and then now this man is announcing that he's going to surge the troop. That announcement was made about 5 or 6 hours ago as to the recording of this tape. And you've got China on your front page, and we can't find any article about Mr. Trump talking about how he's going to increase these stormtroopers. That is not...
That's important. We should have had that right at the top.
And Fox News is supporting Trump by their silence because they know that if Obama did this, they would... if Obama did this, there would literally be streets full of dead agents. I guarantee it. So, terrible, terrible look. Trump is, you know, the Biden plan is working perfectly. Biden's handlers have basically said, just shut up, Joe.
I know, just be quiet. And
his brother is he's going to destroy himself, and that's what's happening. Unbelievable. Nothing else to say. Love your neighbor.
Take care of each other.
Middle America.
We are the media.
Till next time, guys.
We will not stand for their blatant human rights violations.